Hey, my name is Nico, and today I'm going to be doing a book to movie comparison for The Long Walk. So I'll be going over what changes were made from novel to screen and whether I think novel fans will be happy with the final product. To kick things off, I'm going to be giving my general, overall, non spoiler review for the film as a novel enjoyer. So, my general thoughts are I found the movie to be really enjoyable, especially as someone who did read the book. And I think the first two-thirds of this movie are a great adaptation of the novel. The beginning, especially, follows the book almost beat for beat, which makes it a really rewarding watch experience if you are someone who enjoyed the book. Now, I had so much fun seeing these characters who I had grown to really love on page put to screen. I think a lot of them, especially visually, are represented very well. I think all the actors did a phenomenal job portraying these characters. Special shout out to David Johnson. He played McVrees. He's also from Alien Romulus. He is an incredible actor. I'm so looking forward to seeing him in other projects because I think he does a great job playing McVrees. He really brings his A game for this role, and he's definitely the standout for the film. The movie's greatest strength, in my opinion, is how well it condenses the major story beats in order to keep the movie fast paced and entertaining. So, the biggest problem with adapting any book and putting it into a 90-minute film is you are taking 300 pages worth of content and trying to condense it down. So, you're trying to keep all of the important elements while still making a fast paced and entertaining film. And I think overall, The Long Walk did that job very well. They took a lot of scenes and events in the movie and found a way to either shorten them or combine them with other events so that we get pretty much every major plot point in its. I want to say this movie's 90 minutes, maybe an hour 45, but in a very condensed runtime. Extra plus for people who were book fans, we get a lot of dialogue that is ripped straight from the novel. So a lot of my favorite quotes were all put to screen, and I was so excited. You get the moment where you're watching it and I'm like, "Oh my god, he's going to say the thing." And then he says the thing. So that is really fun if you are a book fan. And now in the opposite direction, if you never read the book, I do think this movie does a great job introducing you to this world and to these characters. So there is a text scroll at the beginning of the movie that gives all of the context you need going into it if you have no idea what the book or anything is about. So I do think if you are a fresh pair of eyes who has no context for the Stephen King novel, they do give you all the information you need up front, including the world building. So a lot of things that were never mentioned explicitly but were hinted at in the book are explicitly stated at the beginning of the movie, either in dialogue or in the opening text scroll. You get that this is a post war America, that they are in economic decline, and it explains what the long walk is. So you will not be confused going into this movie if you had no knowledge of the novel, which of course should be the goal for any book to movie adaptation. You're supposed to be able to take someone who is completely fresh and has no idea what's going on and properly condense and convey the story in an entertaining way. So overall, I think the movie did its job and did its job exceptionally well, especially compared to other book adaptations where they completely butcher the story or they make it so confusing. If you didn't have any pre-knowledge of the world and its characters, it wouldn't quite make sense. I think it does a good job of balancing both and making both parties happy for an overall very enjoyable theater experience. Okay, now that I have all the good stuff out of the way, I do want to preface and say that the movie did change a lot from the book, and it's a fundamentally different take on the story. So, the main change is going to be with the ending. This is a completely different ending from movie to book. So, if you are someone who read the novel, you are definitely still going to have a lot of surprises if you know what's going to happen because they do completely change what happens at the end. So, a pro of that is if you have read the book and you go into it thinking you know what's going to happen, the ending will surprise you. The con is, personally, I prefer the book ending. I do think the ending of the novel is the weakest portion. I did go into this already assuming they're probably going to change it. I was correct. They do make some major changes. Um, so the changes they make to the ending are also going to be a byproduct of the changes they make to a lot of these characters. These characters are different from the novel. Some of them in minor ways, some of them in major ways. So I'm going to be going character by character and breaking down what they changed, what they kept the same, and then ultimately how that affected the ending of the movie. Before I get to the characters, I do want to go over some of the changes that are made to the world. So there are some minor and or major changes made to the prize, the rules, and the general world building in the Long Walk. So first and foremost, the prize is different. Just slightly different, but it is different. So the prize in the novel is left extremely vague. It is whatever you want for the rest of your life. And I love it because for the purposes of the book, the prize does not matter. The prize is left super vague because it really doesn't matter what the prize is. It's just meant to be something motivating enough to get people to enlist. But it ultimately has no actual bearing on the plot of the novel. The major change comes with the movie is that the prize does have a major plot relevance. What they do with the prize is integral to where the story goes and is integral to the ending. So in the movie, the prize is specifically a large sum of cash. They don't say a number, but it is implied to be an extremely large amount of cash, as well as one single wish. This wish can be whatever you want with some caveats. As in, you're not allowed to make law changes, you're not allowed to make any political statements, nothing like that. But essentially, any material object you desire can be given to you. The example they give in the movie, which is really funny, is they say one kid who won one year wished for an elephant, and that the major comes out with an elephant with a saddle on it, and that the kid rode the elephant home. Very funny, very very fun visual to give the audience. It is very entertaining for the movie. But that difference they make to the prize is very relevant to what happens later in the movie. Whereas the prize in the book, once again, really does not matter, and that's why it's left extremely vague. Now, the next major change or slight change is that they change the rules of the long walk. So the speed requirement lowers from 4 miles per hour to 3 miles per hour. I think this was mainly done because 4 miles per hour is actually way faster than most people assume. That is a very fast walk and would have been kind of difficult to show on screen while still having the characters talking and interacting. So it definitely looks a little more natural to have them be walking at a slower pace. To me, that makes sense. It's a very minor change, really has no bearing on the plot whatsoever. Major change is if they do cut down on the cast, as in it goes from 100 competitors to 50 competitors. I do enjoy that they give the reasoning they kind of give for it is that you pick one boy from each state. There are 50 states, thus 50 competitors. And it does make sense from a filmmaking standpoint to go from a group of 100 boys. It's a lot easier to manage and film a group of 50 boys. This does help them to condense the story and to make it go at a faster pace. So this way, people die a lot more quickly, and we are able to get to the ending point where we have the final handful of boys much more efficiently than how it is in the novel. Another major change to the rules is that it's no longer a competition for boys between the ages of 13 to 17. They do age up the core cast of characters. It's explicitly stated that you have to be at least 18 to join the Long Walk. So once again, it makes sense. They don't want to take really young actors. All these actors look to be in their late teens to early 20s. So they definitely age up the cast. Personally, my only complaint with this is that I think it does take away from some of the horror of the events. The fact that these boys initially are ranging from as young as 13 to around 16 years old with our main cast. And then the last major change I want to go over is the lack of spectators. Spectators are mentioned. We see a very small handful throughout the film, but they do not play a major role like how they do in the novel, where the spectators are a core component of the story. All right, now let's discuss what changes were made to the characters, because these are fundamentally different characters between the book and the movie. So, the biggest change is probably made to our main character, Ray Garrity. So, he undergoes a lot of changes from book to screen, the biggest being his motivation for joining the Long Walk. So, Ray, I love him, he's my baby boy, but in the book, he really is a very unmotivated guy. He's not exactly joining the walk for any strong political or personal reason. He more so doesn't quite know what to do with himself and feels like he's gonna find meaning on the long walk. This is very different from Ray Garrity in the movie, who is extremely motivated. His reason for joining the long walk is to avenge the death of his father. He is joining the walk with a plan to win the prize and use that prize in order to get his revenge on the major. So in the movie, he's incredibly politically outspoken, idolizes his dad, and is there gunning for a way to make major changes to the world they're currently living in. So he's definitely a lot more noble and has these grand plans for fixing the system versus Book Garrity, who is just this kind of like listless 16-year-old who's young and naive and doesn't really know what he's getting into when he joins the Long Walk. On top of that, they definitely do tweak his personality a bit. So what I mean by that is in the book we get a lot of Ray's personal insecurities, we get a lot of his hopes and despairs and dreams, and a lot of his thoughts on the relationship he has with both his mother, his girlfriend, and to his friends back home. What happens in the movie is that they more so soften him out. They make him a lot less, tortured and complex, and a lot more of just kind of a straightforward, good guy who wants to help his friends and wants to make changes to the world around him. Now, this works for the film. It definitely functions very well for the story they're telling, but it does get rid of some of his what is to me some of his flavor, his spice. Like Ray Garrity has extreme psychosexual mommy issues. I think it makes him fascinating. I love this weird little freak who spends half the novel thinking about the fact that he might be gay and thinking about his weird relationship with his mother. It's amazing. Love the hell out of it. I can understand that it doesn't exactly work very well when put to screen in a mainstream blockbuster movie. So the changes are done for a reason, and I do think this new motivation they give Garrity functions very well for a movie plot, which is they are living in a dystopian America, and our main character wants to see changes made after a personal tragedy. The actual events that happen throughout the film match the book very well. However, the emotions that the characters feel during these events are very different. So Gary Garrity is definitely feeling a lot more of the injustice and is a lot more of helping out his fellow competitors because he believes in general that the long walk is wrong and he's here to try and change that. So these changes to Ray also extend to McVrees. McVrees is fundamentally a different character from the book. He is a lot kinder, a lot more optimistic, and generally functions as more of like a big brother character to everyone else in the plot. He is there to help out, to motivate, and he generally is much more of a good guy in the movie than he is in the book. In the book, he is very sarcastic, very pessimistic, and is overall a nihilist versus the movie where he talks about taking every day, one day at a time, living just for the moment. And he openly shares how he feels with the people around him. He talks about how much he cares about Garrity, how much he cares about Olsen and everyone else. He's still funny, still makes jokes, still keeps that general banter and humor, but with a much more optimistic edge versus his more jaded edge that he has in the novel. Once again, this functions very well for the movie. The movie in general takes a Stephen King horror novel and definitely and turns it more into of a dystopia coming of age type story. It works, especially since the film is directed from the same director who did The Hunger Games. He does a great job adapting that type of story, but it is fundamentally different from the book, and these differences are really reflected in Garrity and McVrees. Now, the core of the novel is the relationship between these two, and they do keep that as the emotional core for the movie, which, chef's kiss, amazing 10 out of 10. They really get the friendship between these two characters down very well. They do carry the entire film, and they carry it well. I was so happy to see their relationship and their love for one another put onto the screen. In the movie, it is explicitly like a brotherly love. Of course, they really don't keep the the gay undertones that they have in the book. They definitely do make a few gay jokes, but a lot of the should I say a lot of the more weird or controversial scenes in the book are definitely taken out, omitted, or changed for the movie. So for all the book fans out there, I'm sorry to disappoint. McVrees does not offer to jerk Garrity off in the movie. They did not put that to screen. We do not get any overt sexual advances. So sorry, everybody. Us, McVrees, and Garrity Truthers lost this one. But it's okay. Overall, their friendship is portrayed beautifully on screen. I do think that they carry this movie, and the relationship between them is so good to watch. It definitely is heartbreaking to watch these two become such close friends and then eventually face these tragedies together. Biggest change they make to McVrees is going to be with his backstory. So McVrees has admittedly a very controversial backstory. If you read the book, you know what I'm talking about. He does SA an ex girlfriend, and that is how he receives the scar on his face. There is more to it than that, but I'm not going to go into everything. But in the movie, rather than doing that, his backstory is that he lost both his parents at a young age, grew up as an orphan, living on the streets, eventually ends up in like a group home, public housing type situation where he's, you know, got a chip on his shoulder. He's constantly picking fights. He ends up picking fights, picks the fight with the wrong person, and ends up in the hospital because of it with the scar we see him with today. So in the movie, McVrees learns from that, and that's where he gets more of his maturity, his positive attitude, his outlook on life, all comes from growing and learning from his past events. Versus in the book, McVrees more so develops his nihilistic, pessimistic view because of what happened with that ex girlfriend. So fundamentally, these two are very different, but for the purposes of what each story is trying to do, this version of McVrees works well for this movie. Next on the list is Stebbins. So Stebbins is also a character I really loved in the book. He is a major character in the novel. So if you like Stebbins in the novel, I think you will be a little disappointed with the film adaptation. Stebbins is definitely has his role reduced. He goes from a very important character in the book to much more of a side character in the movie. We do still get the big reveal. Once again, spoiler alert, I'm going to be spoiling everything. So there is a big reveal in the book that Stebbins is the Major's son. That is his reason for joining the Long Walk, and it is revealed at the end that he is the Major's son and that he was doing the Long Walk in order to gain his father's favor, in order to have his dad recognize him. So that motivation is still kept in the movie, but every other core part of Stebbins's character is essentially really reduced. He's much more of a side character up until the very end, where he reveals he's the Major's son and he talks about, why he's doing this and why he wants to win. Now, this change works for the movie because of how much they changed the ending. The biggest role Stebbins plays in the book is going to be at the end. Stebbins, at the end of the novel, is the last person walking with Garrity, which is why he's so important throughout the book. And him and Garrity have have a very distinct relationship and a very distinct back and forth between them. This is almost completely removed for the movie, where Garrity and Stebbins, sort of talk to each other, but Stebbins is just very much a minor character. And he still has his reveal at the end, but it doesn't quite impact the same way because he doesn't have as big of a role in the ending of the movie as he does in the book. And I'll get more into that when I really talk about the ending. The ending will be its own separate beast I'm going to tackle. Now, the changes they make to Stebbins are most obvious with the fact that what they do is they combine the character of Stebbins with the character of Scram. So, for those of you who saw the movie and don't know, Scram is one of my favorite characters. I love him so much. He is a character in the novel who is described as like a big burly dude who is dumb as rocks and is married and loves his wife so much. So they take a lot of those characteristics from Scram, eliminate him from the movie, and give those characteristics to Stebbins. So Stebbins in the movie is a big buff dude who everyone thinks is going to win, and Scram ends up dying in the book because he succumbs to pneumonia. They give that then to Stebbins. Stebbins is the one who is super physically fit, but unfortunately develops an illness over the course of the Long Walk, and by the end of the movie succumbs to his pneumonia and then chooses to die. So this was almost a deal breaker for me, as in when I sat down for the movie and I realized Scram wasn't in it, I was so disappointed. And I could immediately see that they were giving Scram's characteristics to Stebbins. Once again, if you never read the book, this functions well for the movie. It functions for the plot. Stebbins still does what he's there to do. The reveal still hits. You still get the very cool reveal that Stebbins is the Major's son. It still is a cool emotional moment for everyone. But I miss Scram, and I really wish they would have adapted him for the movie. I think he would have been a delight to see on screen. Oh, before I forget, there is one other major change done to Olsen. Olsen in this version of the movie has a wife. similar to how Scram in the book has a wife. It really is only ever mentioned once, but that is a major change done to his character. Is rather than having Scram with the wife, they give the wife to Olsen. So besides the main three of Garrity, McVrees, and Stebbins, every other character is adapted really close to their book counterparts. I'm actually so happy with how well they portrayed most of these characters. The only ones that are omitted is going to be, of course, Scram, R.I.P. Scram, Pearson, and Abraham. Those characters are either completely non existent or just briefly mentioned, but Olsen, Barkovich, Art Baker, Harkness, and Collie Parker are all included in the film, all play their roles really well, and in general, keep some of their great book moments and have their same personalities. Really, the only major change done to any of these characters is going to be with Harkness. Harkness, who is the writer, one, the casting for this role is perfect. The second Harkness appears on screen, you can immediately tell who it is if you read the book. He is just portrayed really well visually. Now, the main change done to Harkness is going to be with his death scene. His death in the book is done essentially off screen. We get mentioned that Harkness has died, and of course it affects Ray Garrity because that it was his friend. Harkness is the first of the core group to die, and it really affects Ray because he's the first of his friends to succumb to the Long Walk. But in general, especially compared to the rest of the book, it's a very non-gruesome off-screen death. Instead, I think they make a very good decision to not only have his death be on screen, but they make it much more gnarly in the film. So in the movie, Harkness gets a twisted ankle and continues to walk on that twisted ankle until eventually he wears it down until he's walking on the protruding bone of his ankle. He has twisted his foot to the side and is walking on meat, flesh, and bone. It is so fucking gnarly and disgusting to look at. Definitely a highlight of the movie is how painful they make Harkness's death. Because it straight up gave me little chills watching this happen on screen. They make it look like it hurts so bad. Now that we've talked about the characters, let's talk about the ending. This is for sure going to be the most controversial change in the movie. So, like I said earlier, the ending is completely different from the novel. And on the one hand, that's a little exciting. I loved having a surprise when I sat down in the theater. So if you are someone who read the book and feel like there are going to be no surprises going into the film, that is a nice change of pace. Is the ending is completely different, so you still don't quite know where the movie is going, especially once you start to notice those changes. Now, personally, I still prefer the book ending. So the book ends with Garrity winning the long walk. He outlasts McVrees and Stebbins. So after the walk ends, Garrity just continues walking. Essentially, he has completely lost himself over the course of the events of the novel. He is completely hollowed and emptied out. And even when he wins, he can't even recognize the fact that he won. He just continues walking forward in a daze, going towards an unknown beyond. So this ending is very vague and it just sort of ends. There's no real closure given to the novel. So the ending is the weakest part of the book in my opinion. I do think it's rushed in classic Stephen King fashion. However, the ending they decide to do for the movie personally doesn't work as well for me. So let's get into it. Now, the movie ends with McVrees and Garrity being the final two, which is already a major change. In the book, it's Stebbins and Garrity who are the last two remaining. So McVrees and Garrity are the final two, and these two have been the emotional core of the film. They are best friends at this point. They love each other, they care about each other. So now we are watching to see, well, which one of them is gonna be the one to die. So what happens is McVrees takes a knee and attempts to sacrifice himself for Garrity. He attempts to essentially give up so that Garrity can be the one to live. However, Ray goes to his friend, is able to hoist him up and convinces him. He says, no, please keep going for me. Let's just keep walking together a little bit longer. So McVrees agrees, and as they walk forward together, Garrity slowly slows down, and we can see in the background that Garrity is the one who then stops walking, gets his final warning, and gets shot much to McVree's surprise. McVrees is walking forward thinking Garrity is a step behind him, whereas in actuality, Garrity tricked him in order to sacrifice himself. So McVrees is the one who wins the long walk in the movie. He is the one who gets the prize. And in a twist that I personally saw coming, especially if you're paying attention to the beginning of the movie, McVrees fulfills Garrity's plan. So Garrity told McVrees that what he was going to do was that when he won the prize, he would request a gun and then right there and then shoot the major, thus avenging his father's death. So McVrees, after the loss of his friend, it's pouring rain, darkness surrounding them, the major comes up and says, "All right, congratulations, lad. Well, like, what do you want? I will fulfill your one wish." So McVrees asks for the gun, they give it to him, he shoots the major dead, and then walks off into the darkness, and that's how the movie ends. Now, I think the reason this ending doesn't work as well for me mainly comes down to the fact that I really liked that the book didn't have a fight the man message. The book wasn't about a revolution. The book was about forming friendships and relationships under dire, horrible circumstances. The book is a tragedy, and the movie more so spins it into a bit of a rebellion, fighting the man, fight the power story. Honestly, my take on this ending in the movie is that it works for the film. It's a perfectly serviceable ending, but I do just find it, especially as someone who loved the book, to be a bit disappointing. I don't care for the straightforward fighting the man message that the movie really focuses on versus the book, which is a lot more about despair and losing yourself, and the ending is properly vague and sad. Whereas the movie, of course, does end in tragedy. Everyone dies except for McVrees, but we still get this like moment of triumph where McVrees requests the gun and shoots the major and then walks off, and that's how the movie ends. This is definitely going to be the make or break it for a lot of people. So if you love the book and love the nihilistic, sad tragedy that is this novel, you're probably going to be disappointed with the direction they decide to take the movie in, because this ending is a complete change. Judging it from a filmmaking standpoint, I do think this ending adds a lot more closure and is much more of a cinematic ending to the story than what the book provides. Making McVrees the winner of the long walk, I'm not as big of a fan of. They make Garrity really noble here, and they have him sacrifice himself for McVrees. And personally, I still would have preferred Garrity being the winner over McVrees. I think McVrees' death would have been an emotional gut punch to the audience, especially because they made him so likable in this film. I really would have much preferred them to stick a little closer to the book version of events. That is going to be pretty much it in terms of differences between the book and the movie. Now, as someone who loved the book, I do still 100% recommend this film. I think it is a solid adaptation, and if you are a book lover, there are going to be so many scenes for you to enjoy on the big screen. Now, yes, the ending is different. Yes, there are still a lot of changes made, but overall, great experience watching it. Had a ton of fun. And if you are someone who has seen the movie, I would recommend reading the novel if you want more of a tragic take on the story. Okay, I'm a nosy bitch, so please let me know, how did you guys feel about this movie? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you wish they would have kept closer to the book, or do you wish they would have changed more? Either way, please let me know. I would love to hear other people's takes and other people's viewing experiences with this movie. Either way, I think this is about it for me. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.